The Phantom Muspah is a boss found within the Gorok dungeon after the completion of the quest Secrets of the North. During the quest, you fight a weaker variant named the Strange Creature, which shares the same mechanics but is weaker overall. The Phantom Muspah, or just Muspah, is commonly killed mid to late game, slightly similarly to Vorkath and Zulrah, and currently produces around 3 million GP per hour. The main drop here is a 1 in 100 Venator shard, which at the time of making this video is about a little over 6 mil on its own. Other than the shard, Muspah's unique item is the Ancient Icon, which allows you to turn your Ancient Staff into an Ancient Scepter, which increases the effect of Ancient Magics by 10%. Lastly, we have the Muffin Pet, which is a 1 in 2500 chance from Muspah. To be able to kill Muspah post-quest, I would recommend having at least 43 prayers so you can use Protect from melee. Obviously, the higher the better here, and optimally, you have Augury and Rigor at 77 prayer. Other than the prayer, I'm just going to recommend 75 plus in ranged, magic, defense, and health. This is just a good base to have. You're going to want higher in all of these if you want to have more consistent trips and not take so much damage, but this is a good starting point for you. For the gear setup, there's several options. We're going to be making use of both ranged and mage gear, as that's Muspah's weakness. Obviously, the best in slot's going to be Shadow with a T-bow, but a majority of people, including me, won't be bringing that, so we're going to opt for the next best thing. Currently shown is the setup I personally use every run. I bring full crystal armor with Bowfa and an Anguish, Assembler, Blessed D'hide boots, Barrow's gloves, and a Ring of Suffering RI. The Ring of Suffering is very useful, as during the fight there's a specific shield phase where the ring directly helps. And then the last thing I have equipped is going to be Sapphire bolts, which are incredible to use for that same shielding phase, and I highly recommend bringing them. Then in the inventory, my mage switch is just Aram's Trident of the Swamp, Occult, Mage Arena 2 cape, Tormented bracelet, and lastly a ward, which goes in the offhand when I switch. Some people will say that you should just use ranged only if you can't afford hundreds of mils of mage gear, but personally, I like the mage switch, so I just bring it. Then I'm going to bring a range pot and a forbidden potion. If you have an imbued or saturated heart, bring that instead. 4 prayer pots, 10 pieces of food, of which I bring mana rays, teleport to house tablets, ring of shadows to get there, a rune pouch with the runes to use ice spells as I'm going to be on the ancient spellbook, and lastly you'll notice I have an ACB and an Odium ward to switch. The reason for this is to make use of the Sapphire bolts during the last phase, and the ACB has a spec that increases your chances of hitting those bolt procs. You don't need to use an ACB, you can alternatively just use a dragon with the Sapphire bolts, but if you can't even afford that, you can just bring a rune crossbow. There is a lot of things you could change about this setup and tune it to your account. For example, if you don't have crystal with Bowfa, you can alternatively opt to bring full Blessed D'hide with a blowpipe for budget, or a dragon crossbow and bring ruby bolts as well as sapphire bolts, or if you can afford an ACB, you can just rock that with the dragon bolts. Other items that can be swapped due to cost is just bringing Barrow's gloves instead of the tormented bracelet switch, and using a fury instead of swapping between anguish and occult, but I would prioritize occult since it has a 10% flat damage increase. Other upgrades you can make from the gear that I'm going to use is the ZCB for your spec instead of an ACB. If you can afford Zarite Van braces instead of Barrow's gloves, definitely bring that. And then if you can combine your ward with a Spirit Shield for the ward F, that will be very good as well for your damage. And of course, getting full Ancestral instead of just Aram's or even Virtus will give you a marginal increase, but not too much. If you feel like your mage gear isn't up to par and you're lacking several things, you can just bring the ranged only method where you're going to use the same Bowfa setup or a crossbow, and instead of the mage switch, just bring more supplies. Now that you have an idea of what gear to bring, we actually have to get to Muspah. The fastest way is to use a Ring of Shadows teleport directly to the Gorok dungeon, but not only does this require the completion of Desert Treasure 2, but you'll also need to get the Frozen Tablet drop from the Duke to use it. Prior to Desert Treasure 2, and still a great way to get there, is simply using Icy Basalts, which can be made after the completion of Making Friends with My Arm, or simply purchase from the GE, or alternatively the Weiss teleport from your own player-owned house, which is what I did prior to obtaining the Frozen Tablet, since you can just hit the pool in the house and then teleport right here. Now I'm just going to briefly go over the mechanics of the fight before I show a real-time example kill. Upon entering the room, Muspah will either spawn being blue or brown. If she's blue, this means she's going to be using ranged and you must pray against it, and then you're going to use your range gear on her. If she spawns brown first, you either want to catch a freeze, but if you don't have ancients and just want to bring staminas, you can just run in a square around the room. You're going to attack Muspah until roughly 100 damage has happened, to which you will just switch to the opposite form of what she currently is. Each time she changes forms, a spike will spawn directly under your tile and you must move out of it to avoid damage. While she's in the blue/ranged form, you are protected against her regular attack, but she also has the ability to use another attack of which you must pray mage against. You'll know she's doing this because she'll lean backwards and put her hands on her head while shaking, and after a couple ticks she'll throw the spell. You just gotta pray mage at least one tick before it hits you and then go back to praying range. As you slowly get her HP down, she has 2 separate special attacks she will use once each per fight. The first special attack is lightning clouds, which cause her to teleport around the arena rapidly and spawn clouds on the ground that move and will deal damage if it hits you. If upon entering the room, Muspah's first phase is ranged, then this special attack is always going to come first in the fight. On screen is a yellow marked tile, which is a safe spot for this phase, and you can stand here to avoid the clouds while clicking her once to allow your character to continue to get free hits on her. If looking at the entrance or door on my screen, you're going to want to come to the south wall and go to this last ice spike here and go 5 tiles north. You can hold left shift on Runelight and mark the tile. The other special attack is extremely straightforward, and if Muspah's first form is melee, then this will always come first instead of the lightning cloud one. In this attack, Muspah will slam the ground, causing 1 to 4 spikes to spawn in the arena that will try to slowly follow you around. All you need to do is move away from these until it's over. Once both special attacks are out of the way, you're just going to continue through the fight like normal until reaching 125 HP. At 125 HP, Muspah will teleport to the center of the arena and unleash a shockwave in all directions. To avoid this, simply stand behind any spike in the arena that blocks your line of sight to Muspah. After this is finished, Muspah will have a 75 HP prayer shield that must be drained. This is where sapphire bolts come in, as 2 bolt procs will essentially end this phase almost instantly, and this is why using the ZCB and ACB spec are so good, since it increases your chance of hitting those specs. If you didn't know, sapphire bolts have a chance to proc and it will reduce your opponent's prayer. And you can even do the Kandarin hard diary, which is going to give you an increased chance each time you shoot the bolt to proc this. You can also flick smite to whittle down the shield, and your Ring of Suffering will also assist. She can still use the mage attack during this phase, so look out for that. After the shield is over, just switch back to your Bowfa or whatever your main hand is and finish the kill. She will spawn clusters of spikes during this phase, so just be wary of moving around so you don't stand on one when it spawns. Now that you had an overview of the mechanics of the fight, I'm going to show you a real-time example so I can describe what's going on and you can just follow this. When you're ready, I'm going to close my bank and teleport using my Ring of Shadows. If you have the Weiss teleport in your player-owned house or the Icy Basalt, use that and then enter the fight. Upon entering the fight, it actually doesn't start yet until you either hit space or click, and then Muspah will spawn. She started with range, so I'm going to pray range and use my range gear. She instantly uses a mage attack, so pray against that, and we already did enough damage for her to switch, so I'm going to switch to my mage and catch a freeze. Since she started with ranged first, I know that she's going to use the lightning cloud attack first, so I'm just going to keep that in the back of my mind so I can make sure to run there. We've already made her switch twice and we're just whittling her down, and then she uses her lightning attack, so I'm just going to run to the yellow tile and click her once and then just AFK until the attack is over. Now that the attack is over, I'm going to put my range prayer back on since you don't technically need it on when she's using the attack, and we're just going to keep going. We've already got her to 50% HP, and we see she just used her other special attack after going back to the melee form. This attack is so straightforward. I actually accidentally took a melee hit. It's no worry though, we're just going to freeze her and run away. You see the spikes are chasing me and she changed form. You just want to click to run away, and then while you're running, switch to your gear and start fighting her again. Always be wary of the magic attack, otherwise just keep going like normal. So the spikes have finished and she's getting low in HP. We know that around 125 HP she's going to use the shield attack, so we're just going to be prepared by standing next to any spikes in the room. As soon as she teleports to the middle of the room, I'm just going to hide behind a spike and then instantly switch to my ACB and Odium Ward. Once we're able to attack Muspah, I'm going to unload both of my specs with the ACB. Luckily this kill I hit both of them. Otherwise, if you don't hit your specs, just keep hitting her like normal with the Sapphire Bolt and hope they proc. Once her shield's down, you can see I flicked Smite to additionally speed it up. All we do is pray range, attack her until she's dead, making sure to move out of the spikes, and pray mage. And that's all there is to the fight. I set a PB of 2 minutes and 33 seconds. With this gear setup, I average around sub 3-minute kills. Sometimes if I'm super unlucky, it can go over that. Obviously, if you have a Shadow or T-Bow or other upgrades from me, your kills will go faster, or if you have worse gear, they'll go slower. So if you're going to be using ranged only, I want to show you the step back method to avoid taking damage since you won't be freezing her. The way Muspah's melee attack works is that if she's moving when she uses the attack and you're praying melee, it won't do any damage as you see here, but if I'm standing still and she's not moving and hits me, it'll hit me through prayer. So the idea is, when she hits you, you wait about 1 or 2 ticks and then run diagonally away from her so she's chasing you when she hits you, and repeat this process. You can make sure to get hits in between every single time that you run diagonally until she changes form. And even if you're using switches with mage and not doing ranged only, you can still make use of this technique so you can freeze her without taking damage. Other additional tips I just want to cover before I end the video is after each kill, if you don't want to wait the full respawn time, if you just pick up the loot and leave the room and instantly come back in, it'll just start the fight immediately. Additionally, if you have the Ring of Shadows teleport, some people opt to just go to their player owned house immediately after every kill picking up the loot, as you can use the restore pool to get full spec, health, and prayer, and then immediately just teleport back and start the fight. And then the last thing that I'll go over is if you get an ancient icon and make it into an ancient scepter, if you've killed Duke and got that tablet already, you can try to get the ice quartz because you can make the ice quartz staff, and this is going to increase the duration of your freezes by a few ticks on Muspah. It's not the biggest increase, but it does help. So that's going to be everything for the video. If you have any further questions, if you just leave a comment asking, I pretty much respond immediately. Otherwise, there's very helpful people in the comments typically anyway. So thank you very much for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and see ya.